Right. All right. So today's webinar is going to be about wait times and different trip planning options there are at the different theme parks and stuff we track. We have a lot of information today trying to go over some of the different things we can learn from wait times, some of the different options you have at displaying things, and so on. So a few topics we're going to talk about today, the different types of wait times that we track, including at the resort, park, and attraction level. How you can see kind of what average wait times are at each of those levels as well. Wait time profiles and graphs, all the heat maps and box plots and all the cool things we have. How you can view past data. Um, then we'll get into some different topics about how to use in-park mode. So it's a way to quickly see wait times when you're in the theme parks, and you can quickly record wait times and things like that. And then we'll get into crowd calendars and some of the different capabilities that exist there, as well as some of how you can research the best days to visit parks. And at the end, we'll have some Q&A. I'll try to answer questions as they pop up throughout the session as well. But I'm ready to get started. Let's see here quick. All right, so I guess we have to talk in the Q&A. We'll have to figure out how to get the other thing working for the next session. All right, so as we get started, my name is Graham Brooks. I'm the owner and creator of Thrill Data. Been doing this about 6 years now, and it's truly a passion of mine. So I'm happy to share this information with others and hopefully have everybody have better vacations. I'm sure we have some travel agents as well, so it's also important that they are able to cater vacations to their clientele, so they're have the best vacations they can possibly have too. So everything I'm going to do today is going to be basically a live demonstration of the website itself in real time. So you can try to follow along as well, or just listen in. This session is being recorded, so it can always be played back at another time if you miss anything. So today's focus is on wait times, right? So you go to an amusement park, theme park, you expect to wait in lines, but nobody likes to wait in lines. But the fact is, you're going to have to wait into them. So we can use wait times for a lot of things, including figure out how busy parks are, when better times in the year to go or visit, when kind of wait times hit minimums or maximums within a day that you can avoid. There's a lot of insight you can derive from them. So today we're going to walk through all kinds of data, show some of the little techniques that are possible on the website, and little tricks that you can use hopefully to have better vacations going forward. Primary focus on today's lessons will be kind of on Disney and Universal, certainly some of the most popular theme parks in the world, and typically a lot of the focus of the visitors that come to the site. So if we get started, let me check the Q&A real quick. All right, so this is the homepage of the website. There's quite a bit of information here. If you keep scrolling down, you can typically get into the parks that we track on the left-hand side here. It starts with Disney World and goes down to all kinds of stuff: Six Flags, Cedar Fair, Universal Hollywood, the Busch Gardens, SeaWorld, etc. Any of these options are links that you can click to go to further information. So for some resorts, such as Disney World, Universal, and Disneyland, we track wait times at 3 levels, basically the resort level, the park level, and the attraction level. So if I click this View Walt Disney World Wait Times button, this will take me to a page all about the resort itself. So any wait times you see here are averages of all the 4 theme parks together as one for each day or each situation. So if we scroll down, the first thing you'll typically see in terms of the wait times on this is kind of the resort-wide average for the current day. So this graph for each blue dot is essentially the live wait time data we have for today, averaged across each 4 parks. The black line you see there is the typical average. So this is kind of the average of 2 or 3 years of data. So you can see today, spring break period for some, we're right about average. on any of the graphs, you can also click and zoom in, make a box. You can zoom in anything, you can hover over anything to see different aspects this way as well. So that's the average for today for the park. As we go down the page, there's also more information, statistics about what's going on in terms of wait times. We give it something called a wait factor, which is kind of a ranking of how busy the day is compared to other days within the population set. This number will change throughout the day as wait times ebbs and flow, and kind of gives an accurate measure by the time you reach the end of the day. There's also some trends on the current day, week and month. So today is actually, so far, it's down across each of the theme parks. But these numbers will fluctuate as time goes on, since it's only noon. Park's only been open 3 or 4 hours so far, so those numbers will change as things happen. We'll get more into the heat maps. This is lightning lane data here, but that's for another session tomorrow. Further down the page, you have graphs over time, resort-wide, as well as broken down by day, year, month. And that's kind of a general overview of the resort level. So if we go down a level farther, let's check on Hollywood Studios. So now this is a page similar to what we just saw, but it's information directly on Hollywood Studios itself. So this is an average now of all attractions at Hollywood Studios that are posting wait times today. We can see that wait times are at Hollywood Studios are pretty close to the typical average we see as well. So this page will have some very similar features as the others, with the also a couple of other graphs we'll come back to in a little bit. The third level of wait times that are tracked are at the attraction level. So if we click on a specific attraction, we can go see details about what its wait times and other information are for today. So on this page, like the others, we have a graph of the current wait times for that attraction in blue dots. The Disney attractions, we also post the forecast percentage. So these are the same that you can get in My Disney Experience. This will be that forecast when wait times will be high or low, just as informational purpose. Sometimes they drive with the data, sometimes they don't. But that's just kind of a way you can see what Disney's forecasting on their end for a particular attraction. So in these pages, you can also see very similar information. We have lightning lane data, but also has the wait times over time graphs that we've seen on the resort and park level as well. All right, so those are the three types of wait times we basically track. So you basically have the smallest of at the attraction level up to an average of all the parks. So you can kind of see where things stand on a given day by looking at different pieces of information. All right, so if we go back to the park level, let's switch to a different park. Let's say the Magic Kingdom. So at the park level, we can get into more details as well. So what are typical averages for a ride? So anywhere you see these buttons on the side, these are typically navigation icons. They either take you to a page or pop up additional information with it where you are. So I click typical wait times. It's going to pop up a table that shows basically the average line you saw on the graph previously in tabular form to see what the average wait time at a given time of day is. And click it to take it away. So this is particularly helpful at an attraction level if you're trying to find when a peak or valley may be in the data. So if this is, for example, on an attraction page, we can see the same information and see what those averages are. All right, so on the wait time profile graph, we also have a bunch of little different plot options we can add ourselves. So what's plotted by default is the daily average, where you see the kind of the dots versus time for the park. We can also click the button for past week average, and it'll plot the wait time profiles for each of the past 7 or 8 days, including the typical wait time that you see in the other graphs as the same gray mark So you can see how wait times are comparing to the typical average. So if we look at just a quick analysis, this page would indicate that March 11th was a lot busier than any of the other days within the time frame. So that's yesterday after we had a lot of rain Monday, so not too surprising that parks kind of rebounded yesterday. Can also plot the past month. This is going to be kind of a bigger scatter plot where each of the days of the past 30 days are plotted on this graph. The thinner the line means it's further away in time. So this is like 30 days ago compared to a thicker line, which means it's closer, or today, which is the black line. So you can kind of see how today compares to the rest of the recent wait times. Can also plot this day in history. So this plots March 12th going back to 2014 in this case. Depending on the park, the past data may vary depending on when we started data collecting. Disney, we have the longest going back to 2014. Universal goes back to 2019. And some other parks will be kind of vary within that range. So we can see that today, so far, I think there's a parade happening right around now. So the wait times kind of drop, but it's pretty much pretty far on the low end for this day going back 10 plus years. So wait times relatively right now aren't that high compared to past time frames at this point. Another iRAF option is comparing today to other recent Wednesdays. So this will plot the past 7 or 8 Wednesdays across the Magic Kingdom. You can see today compared to those kind of about average within that range going back to January in this case. There's a few other plots weather related. You can also plot as well if you're interested in seeing how wait times compared to if there's temperature or rain. No rain today, so that won't show anything, but if we plot against temperature, maybe. There we go. So you can see temperature on the axis compared to the wait times. See how things impact. Disney's not real sensitive to heat for sure, since it's typically pretty warm down here. But sometimes you can see some interesting correlations. So those are some of the things you can do with the particular wait time profile graphs. It's not just the base plot you see with the daily average. You can click the buttons below to see all kinds of different information. Let's check the questions real quick. All right, so lightning lane stuff we're gonna save for tomorrow's webinar. We'll get into all the details of that information tomorrow. All right, so in terms of wait times in this page, we're gonna skip the lightning lane data. Then we're gonna start down where it says wait time graph. So there's several different pieces of information on this page, as well as some external links we can go to as well. Open this in a new tab. This is this is called a box plot. It's a different way of basically displaying the same information, but it kind of shows a spread of data for each attraction on a given day. The Magic Kingdom's a little funky because it has so many attractions compared to another park. But if I zoom in on a section, we can see that for the Jungle Cruise today, the spread of wait time's gone from 47 minutes down to a minimum of 36 minutes. But it's typically averaged around 44-minute wait time. Just kind of one way to compare wait times across the park. We can also view this for past days, and we'll show you how to do that in a minute. There's also a 30-day heat map. So that's going to be basically previously plotted the 30 days of data kind of as single lines. This will give a little bit more detail about what the wait times were at different points for a specific date across that time range over the past 30 days. So pretty consistent behavior the past 30 days across the Magic Kingdom. A few days that are a little greener within the middle. You can see here was a lighter day. My guess is that was a rainy day. just like this past Monday was, where you see some of the lower wait times compared to other points of the cycle. Oops. We scroll down, we can also get information on the current. This is a graph of the live wait times plotted from highest to lowest. So we can see right now, Tiana has the highest wait times. Let me just refresh it. Has the highest wait times at 75 minutes, or actually, if I have to refresh, Tron has the highest wait times, then Tiana, all the way down to the Swiss Family Treehouse being just a walk on, as well as the average. This plot also has some different capabilities in terms of changing the data shown. Right now, it's showing the live data. We can also change it to the average. So this is the average wait times for the attraction so far. You can see Tron leading the way there with a 72-minute wait. We can change it to the weekly average. So this will be the average starting from Monday through Sunday. So this is basically the data this week from Monday through now. You can see Tron's leading that way as well. We plot on a monthly basis as well as a yearly basis. So you can kind of see how lots of information about what's longest short term, as well as what's been the longest wait times long term. We keep scrolling down. This is called a heat map. So these heat maps contain a lot of information, especially for a park that has so many attractions like the Magic Kingdom. But it's a good way to see a lot of things at once and kind of see what attractions are have the highest wait times based on the color, or the lowest. Depending on your screen resolution, you can plot these in kind of different increments. So by default, it plots in an hour increment. You can change the increment to 30 minutes, 15 minutes, or 5 minutes. So it gets rid of the labels if you go to there. You kind of see what attractions at a given time of day have a higher or lower wait time. Again, if you definitely want a bigger screen to plot some of these, because the information gets really small. So mobile devices and stuff is sometimes hard to see these. Check these real quick. All right, so I'll show you how to do this in just a second. Keep scrolling down the page. This is a wait time calendar. So this is not a predictive calendar. It's not a crowd calendar or anything. This is the observed measured wait times on a given day shown in terms of a month view. So we can see, just looking at March, this past Monday was the highest, or sorry, past Tuesday was the highest with the 35-minute average compared to the rest of the days of the month so far. Just a good way to compare where high or low points were within a given month. Now, if we scroll down, we have our daily average wait times. So these plots, you have the daily points, weekly points, monthly, and kind of an overall year average. So these plots show a lot of information, especially on the daily point, because it's a point for every day going back to 2014. There's some filters you can apply to zoom in a certain area. You have these up here that will quickly filter it. This will filter to the past month, past 6 months, year to date, so everything in 2025 so far, past year, and then all time, kind of the default view you had. You can also drag and create your own box and zoom in on a specific area to look at a particular region. So you can zoom into particular levels, however far you want to go. Same for the weekly view, as well as the monthly view. So for the weeks and month, it just kind of averages everything together. So you have less data points as you depend on the unit you have. The year is just a summary of whatever the overall year average wait time was for all the data, for every attraction, for all the parks, combined kind of into one number over time. Then in tabular form here, you can see what the average just by month based on the whole data set we have. So what I like to use these particular graphs are for is you can definitely see where high and low points are within a given year. So maybe we'll start with a weekly view to cut down the data a little bit. But if we take a look at the past year, essentially, you can get a comparison of what weeks were higher or lower compared to others within the past year. Since we're still looking at the base of the data set for going back to 2014, the color codes will not necessarily show high or low for the particular time frame. But I'll show you how you can use past data to narrow down on a particular time frame of interest. So if we look at the past year here, you can see, as expected, your holiday periods around the end of December, early January were your busiest weeks. Even going back, and this is spring break time around Easter or so of 2024. You can see we're actually higher than the holiday season in terms of average wait times. You can see back in early September, wait times kind of hit the overall minimum. So last year, in the past year, basically, from mid July to December, wait times really weren't terrible for the most part compared to historical times. In terms of what you can see here, you typically have like a spike around. You have like Columbus Day here, you have Veterans Day week there. That's where you kind of see those peaks in wait times. You can also do the same in terms of the daily average. You can see over time where wait times were higher or lower, which is a different scale. So you can definitely, so in the Magic Kingdom, and when you get around the Halloween party season, you get a lot of this peak and valley situation where you have a low wait times around a party day, on the party day itself. And then the next day you get a big spike in wait times because everybody avoided going to the park on the party day, and they went the next day instead. So it's interesting to see the different behaviors that occur at different parks as time goes on, depending on what's happening in terms of events or festivals and things like that. Let me see. Do we have any questions on anything I've covered so far? Take a look at the Q&A. I'll have to figure out, this is the first time doing this, so I'll have to figure out how the recording works. But I hope to get it posted. I'm not sure if it's through Zoom or if I post it on YouTube or something like that, but we'll get it figured out. For the holiday question, I'm going to defer that for a moment until we get to the crowd calendar stuff. We'll get more into that. Wait time, rank, and wait factors. Sure. So basically, this set of data, I'm not sure what the total number of days is within this, going back to 2014, but 10 or 11 times 365, pretty big number of days. If you took the average wait time of each day within that period and compared it to each other, you can determine what rank that number was out of that total number, as well as what basically percentile of the data that wait time fell within. So the wait factor is basically the percentile divided by 10 to make it just a smaller number. So a percentile of 1 would be a pretty low wait time compared to the average data set, where number 10 would be a very high number. So in terms of rank, the lower the number, the higher the wait time was for that particular day. So let's take a look just to find something crazy here. Wait times back before the pandemic used to be some really high values, especially in the Magic Kingdom. So let's take, I think this is a really high peak right here. So if we go back to New Year's Eve in 2019, you can see this is the number one highest wait time that we have recorded at 76-minute average for that day, which was a weight factor of 10. So that means the park was pretty packed. So you can use that to compare to other days within a sample set. So if we go back up to today real quick, so that information is published in this page, right, in this little table right down here. Now today's just is within still in progress, so the numbers will change, but right now it's saying it's today would rank number 3,014 out of the past almost 4,000 days with a weight factor of 2 out of 10. So that's saying wait times are below average, pretty mild compared to other days that may occur or have occurred in the past. All right, so that's the live wait time data. That's useful to some degree if you're you're tracking stuff. But the real power comes in past data and seeing what's happened in the past, and to figure out if that's can be a predictor of the future or not. So there's a couple options to change the date. So near the top or the bottom of the page, you have these buttons for, let's say, previous day, and view past wait times. If I go back a previous day, this will take me to the data yesterday. So the information on the page will change a little bit once I do that. So the graph now will compare the wait times yesterday to today. So today's the red markers compared to the blue that were yesterday. You can see that wait times yesterday were significantly higher than today at this point. You can see the statistics on yesterday. Well, that's showing today's statistic, I think. We'll come back to that. I can see the wait times, the daily averages for yesterday. If I click the daily average button, the week won't change since it's the same. But it's possible if you go further back in time, you can get different ranges. It shows me all the wait times on the heat map now for yesterday. And the rest of the information, just going back one day, stays the same. Now, if I click the view past wait times button, it gives me a little bit different option to set a range. So now I could do a range of the start of this year. And then I'm going to clip it at yesterday since we have for the full data set. Now the information will reflect kind of a range. So the plots are going to, like this one's going to show the wait times for the first day of the range I plotted, which was January 1st. But if I scroll down, I can get some different comparison plots now since I have a range. So in terms of instead of just showing the live wait times, it's going to compare today's wait times in red compared to what they were on January 1st in this case. So we'll do a direct comparison of the start and end ranges you do in terms of the live wait times as well as the daily average. But then if I click weekly average, it will compare the wait times of that first week to this week. So you can zoom in and see what particular wait times were for a given attraction. So Tron this week is averaging 81 minutes compared to almost 2 hours back the first week in January. You can also do monthly comparison that way. Year won't change since it's the same year. So this graph now has changed down to showing the wait times that occurred back in January. So it's more populated since it's already occurred. And the real power is these graphs down below will narrow down to the range that you selected. So now it's just showing all the dates that are between January 1st and yesterday. So now the colors do reflect the kind of the smaller sample size of range. You can see which days were busier or less busy, a little bit easier in this fashion. So in terms of the year so far, we can see that the first week of the year was by far the busiest. With a smaller sample size, its rank time rank is 1, with a weight factor of 10. Last week was one of the calmer weeks that we've had so far. Now you can do this for a lot wider ranges as well. So if you could do it for a month, you could also do it for different year sets as well. So let's take a look at last March. You can also click the calendar view, but sometimes it's quicker to just type it in. So this is going to have data that's filtered basically on March of 2024 only. So we can compare. Oops, I typed it in wrong. I'm only doing the first 3 days. Little tip is you can always, a lot of the URLs have the dates. You can also enter them in the URL. And that's another way to filter the data now without using the forms itself. So now this information is all filtered on basically March of last year. So we can see what the busiest days were, what the least busy days were, etc. So all the plots update. So one graph I like to look at is the average wait time by weekday. Yeah, it's always a question. What park should I go to on a given day? So you can look at basically without filtering that, you can get the information for a very wide range of days, or you can filter it down to a specific period and see what the busiest or least busy day was to go within a certain time range. So in March of last year, Mondays were the highest by about a minute. The weekends were a bit quieter. So if I go, let's just take a look at what this year is today real quick. So far this year, we can see that Fridays have actually had the highest average wait time across the Magic Kingdom compared to the other days of the week, with Wednesday and Sunday being the lowest. Now, the Magic Kingdom will fluctuate a bit throughout the year, especially once you get after mid-August. Once you get the party season, the data flips around a lot. But prior to that, you can kind of get an estimate of what wait time's going to be, and advise and figure out which the best day of the week to go is. Let's see. Any questions on that? While I'm on that topic, so the park hours. So if you ever on each of the pages, there's the park hours and time. You can always click on the date, and it'll take you to a more specific park hours page. So this is automatically updated if things change and whatnot. But it also has past hours listed as well. So any of the tables on the site where you see these little up and down arrows next to them, that means you can filter on that table. So you can filter the data and go back in time and see what past hours were throughout different years as a reference. So since they only published the hours out so far, you can use past data to see what things in the past and maybe what they may be in the future based on what occurred then. So lots of potential information to help you plan your vacations. All right, so before we move on, one cool thing that you can do when you're in the parks themselves is enter what's called in-park mode. So on any of the theme park pages, you can click this enter in-park mode. It's going to enable basically the wait times for everything at the top of the screen now. So any page you click on the site, everything's just going to be quickly available right here. So we're basically pulling for the Disney wait times. We're pulling these basically every minute. So this table will update every minute, which is sometimes faster than trying to go into My Disney Experience and pulling them. So these are the same wait times you see there, but you can quickly get them. You can quickly filter based on wait time, name, height requirements. Then over here, you can also basically track what you've done on a particular day. My preferred way is to record the wait time for something. So if I'm about to get into a line, say I'm going to enter a line for Jungle Cruise, I'll click this little timer icon. It's going to start a timer. It's going to keep tracking of how long I wait in the line. And when I've about to enter the ride, reach the end kind of turnstile, so about to be led onto attraction, I'll click that timer to stop it, and it'll record that wait time and store the data on here, as well as also store it and track a trip report for myself. So I'll keep track of everything I did. If I did an attraction that didn't record the wait time, you can always click this little plus button and it'll add it to that trip report as well. So an app is in the future plans. That's certainly something I want to do moving forward. We come back to this last question about selecting weeks. We'll get a little bit into that when we go to the crowd calendars in a second. So let me close this timer real quick, just to show you what some of the capability is. So at the bottom here, it'll say create trip report. When you do that, it will show you a summary of basically everything you've been tracking within that mode for a given day. So if you've written a bunch of stuff, it'll keep track of everything you did, how long you waited for it, how many times you wrote it. It gives some statistics on, how long and on average and stuff you waited in line for a particular attraction too. If I go back to the page, I'm gonna click deactivate, and then just clear it off, and it clears out of that mode. So you can go, if you park hop, you can enter that same park mode for that other park as well, and we can start tracking there, and it'll compile everything into a nice little trip report at the end of the day too. All right, let's get into some crowd calendar stuff. So crowd calendars are somewhat controversial. I think there's an expectation that should be able to predict the future and tell everybody whenever the best time is to go. Unfortunately, it's just not reality. There's so many factors that go into determining what wait times may be on a given day, let alone something that's a year plus out. The weather forecast you have for, certainly only so accurate so far out. And there's so much science around those compared to what you can do with variables known within a crowd calendar. So my advice with crowd calendars is use them as a guide for planning, but don't expect a particular prediction to be perfect. There's just too much information and too many variables at play that to predict stuff far out like that. But they can be a useful tool, especially when you have a large data set of past data. You can figure out when things may be better or worse to go than in the past. There's always a chance that a given day may be busier or less busy, depending on factors that just couldn't be predicted as well. So they're a good planning tool. There's some different methods that we'll get into as well. And it's also important to note with crowd calendars that they're relative to what a park's base level of crowds are. So a low day at the Magic Kingdom is still going to have a lot of people at the park. It's not going to be a ghost town. The only time that really ever occurred was the first days after reopening for COVID. There's always going to be people there, so you can't make just a subjective estimate of crowds based on the number of people you see. It's based on the wait times on a given day being lower or higher than the average you see it throughout a time frame. So a high day wait times are gonna be higher. A low day wait times are gonna be lower, but they're not gonna be non-existent. I think that's certainly important to keep in mind when you're using information like this to plan vacations. So late last year, we introduced a new type of calendar. So typically we had what's called a historical average calendar. So that's information for a given day throughout the year compiled over, X number of years. So the Disney data, we have 10 plus years, Universal data around 5 or 6. So on a given day, say March 12th, what is the average on that day over different times, and you can compile that into a calendar. Now you do have the factor of holidays in there. So the historical average calendars do factor in the different placements of holidays by averaging the particular holiday in the past and placing it at a new date. So things like Thanksgiving that are always moving around in terms of different days of the month being different. The calendars do account for that in terms of the historical average. So it's not just showing you the average for a particular day. It doesn't matter. It is factored in. Then we introduced predictive calendars. So these are using some modeling techniques to take in information on past data as well as other factors, park hours, weather conditions, the number of attractions operating, to try to use that information to make a more accurate prediction based on having a wider set of model inputs, and plugging those in and to see what the model can derive and find trends and correlations between different factors, and it spits out a number. So we have those two types of calendars offered now, and I'll show you how to access both of those, as well as you can see information on the accuracy of the calendars compared to the model prediction versus what is actually measured on a given day, how you can compare different models and things like that. So for a couple of the resorts, there's a resort calendar view. So Disney World, Disneyland, and Universal, you can see a resort view. Then it goes down to the park level below that. So let's take a look at Disneyland here. Just give us a little difference here. So if I click this button here, show historical average calendar, this is going to be the average of both Disneyland parks on each day of the year within the data set that we have, with the caveat of the holidays being placed depending on what they were for a given year. So this is a view of the entire year with a prediction based on those historical averages, basically ranking them from lowest to highest wait times within a given year. So most of the year is going to be around the average. You're going to see the kind of that yellowish color. But then you'll have the greens for days that have historically been lower wait times, and red a little bit higher. So most of the season, until we get there's a random day that's June 15th has been lower. I'd have to go research some more about why that particular day shows that compared to the rest. But if we go down, we can typically we start seeing wider trends of greens around the mid-August timeframe. So schools start going back in mid-August, and then beyond that, everybody by early September after Labor Day is typically in school. Those are typically periods within the year that have had lower wait times historically across Disneyland Resort. So instead of trying to say, I'm going to pick a particular day to go, you can say, okay, these weeks historically are lower off than the surrounding weeks around them. So that's probably a decent time to go if I'm able to and experience lower than average wait times. As you get to the end of the year, things start to pick up a little bit, especially around the holiday season. You have some of your busiest days historically. That's a resort-wide historical average. Then just recently, for the resorts that have multiple parks. I've also started publishing the latest model predictions for a given date. So we'll get into the specific calendars for these, but it's another way to view information about what the latest version of the model is predicting at a given time for each park at each time of the year with a resort average. It's basically the average of those two numbers to give you the total resort average. Again, just another piece of information. All right, so if we go into a specific park, let's take a look at, we were talking about Magic Kingdom a lot, so let's take a look at that. So the default view you're going to get on the Magic Kingdom is the latest version of the predictive model. You can also, at any time, click this average data calendar to view the historical average. This is basically just what's been measured over time, averaged together for a given date and shown. So you have that capability if you prefer to not look at the predictive model versions of things. Now, like weather forecasts, or if you're from Florida, the hurricane models, there's new models all the time. You can plug in information and spit out new results. Things are changing all the time, and you get new information the closer you are to things. So, for example, since the park hours only known out for 61 days or something like that. Beyond that, you have to make an assumption of what they might be in the future. But as you get closer to that date, you can plug in new information that those park hours now. What rides are down for refurbishment. You can kind of plug in new information to get new results all the time to better refine near-term predictions with information you have. So these models are run every couple of weeks or so with the latest information, and they'll spit out different results depending on the information that's given to them. So there's different versions of models, and then you can always access the previous versions of those models to see what predictions were and how they've changed. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So this latest version of the Magic Kingdom model, I believe was run last week. So it's always kind of a table of values for each day of the year. Then on the right-hand side, or if you're a smaller screen, it'll just be further down the page. We also track information on what the accuracy and error of these models are. So this model, when it was trained on the previous set of data, so this is past data, it basically came up with an average error of 2.8 minutes, plus or minus what the measured value was. So basically within 3 minutes accuracy is what the model should be for a given day in terms of predicting the overall average wait time. We also keep track of what error is happening based on the model compared to what actually occurs after the introduction of the model. So this model was introduced last week, so there's kind of only a few days has actually been compared to, and the average error of those days so far is about a little less than 5.5 minutes. So in general, this model has been over predicting, so under predicted one day. So the models are expecting a little bit busier parks than that have actually occurred so far. So today's beginning in flux as the numbers kind of build up as times happen. We'll see the results a little bit by tomorrow. We'll have kind of a final number of actually what it did. But yesterday, a little bit under predicted the wait time by 2 minutes, which again was within the expected error of the model. But the model also didn't expect Monday to be such a rain effect that kept people away that then rebounded the next day. So it's always very transparent of what the model predictions are versus reality. So you can always get an idea of where things are. If I scroll down the page near the bottom, this is going to show me a list of the different models that have been executed for the Magic Kingdom. So most of these started late last year, around December 10th. The first set of models were introduced. But these are all different model runs. A few are different types, so they use a little bit different algorithms behind the scenes. You can click on any of these models to see what its predictions were. And you can see also its accuracy compared to the days that have occurred since it. So one of the original models was this we're gonna go to this 1212 model version V. This was one of the original predictive models that were released. It's got a bit of a wider range of predictions since this was introduced quite a bit later back. So you can go in and look at all how it compared on a daily basis, going back to the first of the year, what his predictions were. So if we look at yesterday, it predicted an average wait time of 38 minutes. It ended up being 35 minutes. So a slight over prediction, but considering this did not have any information about the actual park hours, the actual weather and stuff, accuracy of 3 minutes is pretty far within not far off what the training bounds were. So you just can't expect it to be perfect, but it wasn't a crazy over prediction, especially being over 90 days out from the actual day of occurrence. Now, something we could do, we can compare that model results with our latest model. So if I find that model again and click over here and say where it says compare, this will show me a breakdown of the two different models over time for each of the days that hadn't measured and see how it changed. So the first model is our latest model run just a little late last week. These are all the values it predicts for each day of the year compared to what the older model was. And what if the day has occurred, you can see the actual values too, to get an idea of how accurate or not it was. So if we go to the future, so days that haven't occurred yet, we can see where the new model expects wait times to be higher or lower than they were in the past. So overall, the numbers have trended down quite a bit. Only tomorrow it is expected to be a little bit higher than the older model back from December. A few days here and there, you see some slight differences. This is kind of an idea of you can see how information changes over time as information gets closer, and ideally, hope you can be a little more accurate as things get closer, as some of the unknowns come into play or not. So like the hurricane track forecast and stuff, you'll see them kind of move back and forth as things get into view. But it's hard predicting, 300 days plus in the future too. There's just so many unknowns at the given time that you have assumptions that you fill in and you hope they get better as things get closer. Questions on the crowd calendars? All right, so another planning tool. So on these calendars, any of the days you can click on. So let's click on tomorrow, for example. It's going to take you to what's called, I call it daily research. So this gives a history of wait times on a particular day. So for March 13th, the average weather 78 degrees. I think it's supposed to be a little bit warmer than that tomorrow. It tells you how given over the past 3 years what that average length of this day was. So tomorrow has been historically a pretty busy day, ranking number 16 out of the past 366. So one being the busiest day in the past year. That's pretty significant. So tomorrow's a pretty historically busy day compared to other days within the year. You see what the model predictions are for that day. You have an average, but you can also click through and see what the different versions of that, the different model runs to predict for that given day. We can see what the wait times over time have been for that given day. Traction averages, depending on how impactful the day of the week is on the wait time for that. They can also go back and view different wait times by year in terms of heat map view, so you can see all the attraction wait times, as well as on the right-hand side, you can see what the average wait time per attraction was on a given date for that um, over the different data years within the data set. So that's a useful tool for trying to figure out which particular days and stuff you want to visit as well. So similar to this, there's also the Halloween section up top. So this is very similar information, but for Halloween events, we track Halloween Horror Nights on both coasts, Oogie Boogie Bash, um, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. You can go in and click and see very detailed information on each of those events in terms of what event nights have been busier, um, what house wait times are, and so on. So that's Halloween Horror Nights, Not So Scary Party. Um, you can basically get an average for each attraction on what its wait times were per event, which day of the week was busier, um, all kinds of good stuff. Then very similarly, we have the holidays. So for a given resort or park, you can take a look at what wait times have historically been on or around some of the different holidays that occur within the year. So you can see a universal the December timeframe, late December timeframe of the Christmas holiday, you certainly have some of the highest wait times of the year. Whereas around other holidays, things really aren't too bad. You get a wait times history on a particular holiday, get all kinds of information about what each attraction was, what the averages through time have been on a given day, and so on. All right, I know that's been a lot of information. Feel free to type any questions you have, and I'll try to get to them. Um, Otherwise, I appreciate everybody attending, and we do have another session tomorrow talking specifically about lightning lane data. So I'll be able, interesting and get into topics of how to read some of the availability charts we have, the heat maps, and when additional light links get released and stuff like that. So if you haven't signed up for that, feel free to do that on the site as well. All right, if no more questions, I'll end it here. Thanks, everybody.